Thank you very much, Professor Lamska. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? And could you see my PDF? And if it goes along, could you see the next one? Okay, okay. Start with this map. Okay, okay. Everything is working very best. Now I think I am the third part of the Visegrad Triangle. And one cannot help in this topic like that to start with the Visegrad Compromise. But I will not speak today of the Visegrad Treaty. Everybody knows, at least in this circle, what happened there. But I will be having a look at what happened before, because in Hungarian history, when Charles I ascended the throne, and he was crowned the first time in 1301, there was a span of 34 years at least up to the Visegrad Compromise, and he can be seen as a great monarch, as a great arbiter, a great maker of peace, who had all the parties sat onto the negotiating table and arranged for Silesia and the Polish crown. At one stroke solved everything in Central Europe. But what happened? I was always curious what happened before in these decades, in these very difficult years in Hungarian history. We should start out from Charles I coming into power. As you mentioned in your rationale, Professor Damska, that the reunification of the Kingdom of Poland was in a way connected to the vital engagement of the neighboring countries. There was a similar process in Hungary, where Poland and the unification of Poland and Kietek Vladislaus himself was very much needed. And Hungary did have a role in return, and everything is interrelated, either to Polish or Bohemian, and we will see Austrian politics. And because in this period in Hungary, Charles I had to first struggle with claimants, rivals, of course, as we could hear from Professor Antonin's paper, Wenceslas III, Wenceslas II's son, as a rival to the throne of Hungary, than Otto of Bavaria in the first decade. But he had to struggle against oligarchs, territorial landlords in Hungary, great kindreds, ruling mainly with royal rights, royal prerogatives as well. And his royal policy, Charles's royal policy, diplomacy cannot be seen independently, irrespectively of the fight against oligarchs, and it has to be seen interrelated with his foreign policy, because a number of foreign powers, ranging from the Habsburgs to the kings of Serbia and the voivodes of Wallachia, intervened into the inner struggles of Hungary. For example, I just have a look at some charters of the reign of Charles I, and I just selected a number of charters speaking of the Germans, the power of the Germans, potentia Teutonicorum, as the Habsburgs, Dukes of Austria, intervened with some kindred policies in Hungary, mainly the genus Heder or the Kőszegi family, and they supported the lords from Austria. We have a certain number of charters testifying that the lords of the Kőszegi clan were supported by their rebellion against the king was supported militarily with arms, with forces, and we have donation charters. Speaking of that, these lords from Austria, this military assistance from the Habsburgs were more or less continuous in the 1310s and 20s up to the even the 1330s, and they were devastating territories. And if we go back to the maps, we have a territory of around present-day Bratislava, at that time Pozsony, Pressburg, in the county of Pozsony, and a region between the rivers Drava and Mura, Murakkers, or in Slavic Medjugorje or Murinzel, were for years, for decades under Habsburg rule, and the charters testifying that a foreign interference from the House of Habsburg, and it is only just several snapshots to the political situation, and in return, even to confirm, to strengthen his position on the Hungarian throne, King Charles I applied for foreign help, either Habsburg help or Bohemian help, or we will see a Polish help, and we'll be going to these slides in rough color. I'm indicating dynastic relations. So in these decades, we can see, or we will be having a picture that Charles' policy was pragmatic. He was balancing between three powers: Habsburgs, Przemysl, then Luxembourgs, Poland, and others. But he was trying to preserve the integrity of his kingdom between quarreling parties for decades. And he had a very good sense in diplomacy, but which policy can also, or might also, be seen as that of an unscrupulous turncoat or something like that, because he was willing or inclined to sacrifice these alliances on the altar of momentarily gains when it required, current interests required. But and he deserted alliances, and he deserted defected marriage alliances. But I will see this that it was a special political situation in the region. That would be my final conclusion, when it should be seen as adaptation to the current political needs of a very much changing shift in power, as it is mentioned in the rationale of the session. So, but there was one thing that did not change in his policy, and he was pragmatic, but he did not defect the Polish alliance. And they were partners from the very beginning with Lokietek, Vladislaus, and here comes the dynastic aspect into our picture, because Vladislaus Lokietek, her wife at least, was having the blood of the Arpads. as you can see on the slide, through Jadwiga of Kalisz and Beata Jolanta, Bela the Fourth, blood of saints, so running in her veins when Elizabeth Lockett married Charles of Anjou in 1320. It was highlighted in the source that she is having the blood of Arpad. So and this relationship you could see even in the ecclesiastical policies of Charles I, when he tried to promote Polish clerics to the positions of the Bishop of Veszprém and the Archbishop of Esztergom from the relatives of her former wife, Mary of Bitton, daughter of Casimir, Duke of Bitton. So it is a long-term process to turn to the Polish as partners in the fight at the very beginning. So the situation at the very beginning looked like this. If you see on the first part of my slide, that Charles of Anjou was in conflict with his major adversary, the Czech kindred, and at that time Wenceslas II also crowned his son Wenceslas III crowned monarch of Hungary as Ladislaus of Hungary, was promoting the cause of the Czech kindred. And against this, Charles I turned towards the Habsburgs, because you could see there was a strong kinship between the Angevins and the Habsburgs. At that time, Charles I, his mother was Clemencia von Habsburg, sister of Albert and aunt of Rudolf III, and the Habsburg dukes supported Charles against the Czech kindred and the and the Bohemians, and in 1304, as it was mentioned already by Robert here, that 1304 Lokietek was back in the south of Poland, as far as I can remember. Yes, with Hungarian help. And in 1306, he was also promoted by Charles I through the royal faithful Abba kindred. They promoted the cause militarily. They moved into the territory of Poland in 1306, and they supported this cause. Late at that time, Charles married a Polish princess, and then later on promoted the Polish cause. This one did not change, and Charles resumed the Polish policies in a way of the late Arpads. He was not doing anything new, but renewed the policies of Bela the Fourth. I wouldn't like to, of course, speak on the saints, Kunigunda and Salome and others in the saintly family of the Arpads, closely related to the Polish princes in the 1260s and 70s. And Ladislaus was doing the same. He resumed his connections to the Arpads, and in a way, Charles I was emphasizing that I am the one of the blood of the Arpads. I am the one consanguineous with the blood of the Arpads, and that is why he as in her fourth marriage, married Elizabeth Lockietek. And but this policy had to be pragmatic because of the shifts in the power constellations. In the early years of the 1310s, Charles I had the same greatest enemy, the Czech kindred, at that time supported not by the Przemyslids, but the new dynasty, the Luxembourgs, on the throne of Bohemia. And he turned towards the Habsburgs, who needed an ally in return in their struggle for the imperial crown. against the Wittelsbach dynasty. Louis IV, the Bavarian, and Frederick III were quarreling about the crown of the King of the Romans. And Charles could rely on his relationship to Clemens of Habsburg, and they were related at that time. But in a few years' time, because of the changes, very dynamic changes in the power constellation, Charles I got into a greater conflict with the Heder kindred, the Kőszegis, who turned to their neighbors, Austria, the Habsburgs, and as the Czech kindred got into conflict, if you can follow me, with the Luxembourgs because of territorial conquests. That the Czech kindred also conquered territories on Moravian lands. And the Luxembourgs got into conflict with the Czechs and the Habsburgs at that time because the Luxembourgs were promoting the cause of Louis IV the Bavarian, and at the end of the line, at the farther ends of the line, Charles I of Anjou met with the Luxembourgs. They were needed to get into a compromise, and this compromise was sealed with a marriage. Sister of John of Luxembourg, Beatrice married Charles in the 1310s. But if we after a few years' time, it was vital for Charles, for the Hungarians, to promote the Polish cause. And when in 1319, 1320, 21, the Luxembourgs, as we have heard, renewed their territorial claims against Ladislas for Poland and allied with the greatest adversary, the Teutonic Order, and caught them in between a pair of pincers from the north and from the west. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry, just in 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so it is the greatest conflict for Poland after the unification of the throne. But Charles of Anjou, in this very critical moment, started to give support to Lockiatek, and it was sealed again with the marriage in 1320, and this alliance at the end of the 1320s was again in a way pragmatically broken, because Charles of Anjou tried to detach one member of the House of Habsburg, Otto de Mary, Frederick's brother, and again chose to ally with the Luxembourgs. When the Luxembourgs did not threaten Poland, they allied with the Angevins in Hungary, and together, at the end of the 1310s, they allied and made a marriage contract between the Luxembourgs and the Angevins, Ladislaus and Anne of Luxembourg. But the children died very soon, and it was now for another turn in the power constellation. But this is the very end of the power constellation now. That again the Teutonic Order and John of Luxembourg attacked Poland, and Charles needed an ally again. And in that case, he neglected the marriages with the Luxembourgs because of their attack against Poland, and asked the Habsburgs again, which was again in turn, in 5 years' time, was again broken. It can be seen as he was a great turncoat, and he did not keep his word, but it succeeded in making up the compromise of 1335, which I think the greatest result is that it brought peace for decades, and with inheritance treaties afterwards, with Casimir, and even with the Luxembourgs in 1338, these three monarchies were starting to make a peaceful progress, which is a unique thing if you take into account the decades, the 3 decades of continuous quarrels and hostilities.